Hey, welcome back to the Arrowhead Addict podcast. We're back with another segment here called Behind Enemy Lines. This week, the Seattle Seahawks visit Arrowhead Stadium. It seems like every leap year or presidential election, we see this matchup, and it's finally here again, which means we finally get a chance to talk to our friend Lee Vowell from 12th Man Rising. Lee, how are you feeling kind of heading into week 16 and overall?
It's kind of funny because a lot of 12s are out there like saying, oh, the season's not successful anymore. But to be honest, they've already probably exceeded expectations for what people thought they were going to be heading into the season. Am I confident going against the Chiefs? Not at all. We actually have a staff predictions article coming out, and a few of the staff are more confident than I am for sure. But, I expect the Seahawks to not do well against the Chiefs, but they're already at 7 wins, and that's better than what I thought they'd be entering the season.
Sure. Well, I want to get into that, and I want to get into your prediction too. But, this whole segment is really about, it's one thing to try to watch your opponent from inside, our own Homer or rose-colored sort of lenses. And we like to bring in experts from the outside to say, hey, here's the team that you're going up against. Here's what's going on. And before we do that, before we get into this week's like specific matchup, I think it'd be great to get sort of an overview of the Seahawks, because it seems like a tale of like a Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing. The Seahawks start out they get to 6-3, right? Like at that point, it looks like, wow, like what in the world are we watching here? Pete Carroll's working some magic. What was going so well in that first 9-game stretch, 8, 10 game, whatever it was, that had the Seahawks riding high and making believers out of people week after week?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned expert, and I was like, oh, somebody else is coming on. Great. I can kind of piggyback on there. But the thing with the Seahawks season really is it's not really that they started off 6-3, which they did. It's more like a matter of there were a 4-game stretch before they had their bye week where they won 4 in a row. So they were 2-3, and then they jumped to 6-3. 2 of those games are against the Cardinals, who are not very good. The strangeness with this season, to be honest, was more the run defense, which is non-existent at this point. So starting off the season, they were pretty good. And they got all the same players they had last year: Poona Ford, Al Woods, everybody coming back, Brian Monet, added Shelby Harris. And they weren't good to start the season. Then 4 games, even against Barkley of the Giants, they were fantastic. And then the bye week hit, and they came back, played a game in Germany against the Buccaneers, got ran over, and they've got ran over since. So the issue seems to be the interior run defense. The pass defense has been fine because nobody feels fear to throw, to have to throw against them. They just run the ball. 6-3 was shocking to us all. Winning 4 in a row was shocking to us all, I think, as 12s. But, to the disappointment with the season comes post bye week and just how the interior run defense changed. That's really the Jekyll and Hyde of the season, is the run defense. Everything else has been okay. Gino's been great. Everything else has been pretty good. But when you get run on and dominated time of possession, you're not going to win many games.
Sure. So you're talking about the difference between 6-3 and really in control of your own destiny toward the postseason to now 7-7, which is a precipitous fall.
Yeah.
And now the ball is out of your control, so to speak. You're not in charge of your own destiny. That fall is all about the run defense. Like you would say, that is it and primarily it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to it. So I think the direction of the defense, Clint Hurt is the defensive coordinator, first year in Seattle.
Yeah.
But people say, oh, it's a Pete Carroll's defense. It is to some degree, but it's still the coordinators that run it. Maybe he's a little bit over his head because teams adjusted to what the Seahawks were doing during that 4-game stretch.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to readjust. I don't see the Seahawks winning another game. I think they're going to go 7-10. They're going to lose to the Chiefs, the Jets, because they can run the ball, and the Rams probably will. They always lose to the Rams, and they somehow beat them just a couple weeks ago. But yeah, a lot of it is because, again, teams aren't throwing the ball. I mean, maybe Mahomes, he's a different kind of beast. We'll go out there and throw for 350, 400 yards.
Sure.
But the talent on the secondary, especially the young talent with Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant, it's there. Woolen is just a beast. But if you can't stop anybody running the ball, again, they dominate time of possession, which is what we saw in 2021. We didn't see for that 4-game stretch or most of the season up until the bye week. And since then, it's just been, it's 2021 all over again. Ken Norton Jr. must be the DC all over again.
I'm glad you brought up Woolen because I wanted just to ask about him. For Chiefs fans, a few years ago, we had a rookie corner named Marcus Peters, who was this ball hawk who looked like, really in his first couple of years, he almost looked like a Hall of Fame trajectory sort of because he was outpacing everyone by so much when it came to, generating turnovers, making plays on the ball. Would you call him, he looks to be certainly the steal of the Seahawks draft, but maybe the steal of the whole draft?
I think so. In fact, we pre-draft last year, we wrote an article at 12th Man Rising that maybe the Seahawks will get a steal of the draft in Tariq Woolen and draft him in round 2. I didn't think he would actually fall until round 5. And when he did, I was like tweeting like, oh my gosh, is Woolen going to fall to the Seahawks? And so Woolen physically is just a freak. He runs fast. He's got long arms. What we didn't know about him is how intelligent he would end up being. As far as a rookie football IQ, last game or 2 games ago, he actually was covering a guy out wide, saw the pass go over the middle, left his guy out wide, ended up knocking the ball down. So there's 2 facets about this. I think he was underrated as far as his football IQ. But the other thing is Richard Sherman helped him a ton this offseason. And a lot of people don't see enough credit for that. Sherman is like, you either like him or you don't, right? But in this offseason, Pete Carroll, Sherman lives in the Seattle area, but this offseason, Pete was like, hey, do you want to come help us out in training camp? And he helped Woolen a ton. There's no doubt that without Richard Sherman, Woolen might still be good, but nowhere near as good, nowhere near as far along as he is currently. And I think that's the great thing about Richard Sherman, to still help out. A lot of former Seahawks do that.
Yeah.
But Woolen just has enough athletic ability where this is just the tip of the iceberg. He's only going to get better from here.
Yeah.
The other issue is they need another corner. So if Mahomes just wants to throw to one side of the field on Saturday, he'll do what he wants to do.
As a Chiefs fan covering the Chiefs with a lot of Chiefs viewers, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Russell Wilson deal, because now from our perspective, it's the wonderful torpedo that has sunk that franchise. Looks like for years to come. How do you even rebound from the financial ramifications of it, let alone the draft capital going your way? I was hoping you could kind of give us some insight into, we know the Russell Wilson side and how that hasn't worked, but how have the pieces that you received in that deal worked, and what draft capital is left to spend after that?
Yeah, so the on-field pieces that we got, Shelby Harris has been okay. Noah Fant's been pretty good. He's a good player. He hasn't been transcending the offense and making it that much better. It's funny because I was thinking, we played Bobby Wagner already. The Seahawks did. I didn't play Bobby Wagner. I would get killed. But the Seahawks played Bobby Wagner. He was phenomenal. At this point, really throughout the whole season, if I could have one player back, it would be Bobby Wagner. And to be honest, with the Chiefs, if I could have one player back, Frank Clark, I'd love to have more than Russell Wilson. The last 2 years, really the last 3 years, Russell went from a player who got the best out of his athletic ability, which was to be able to run, throw deep. And instead, he seemed to think, I want to be Aaron Rodgers and I want to be a prolific passer. And he's just not built that way. It's kind of a perfect storm this year where Russell wasn't as running as much. Before he got hurt, he started to run a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that offensive system in Denver is just, the coach needs to be fired, period.
Yeah.
That was just a bad hire. But we saw what happened last week, right? Or this last game, the Broncos offense actually looked better. I know the Cardinals were missing some pieces of their defense, but the quarterback looked like he knew how to run the offense better than Russell needed to. And I think that's the ability of that quarterback or the capability of that quarterback thinking, I need to do what I can do. And Russell just is like, I want to pass. I want to pass. I want to pass. He's not that kind of quarterback. I'll be honest, if the Broncos had Geno Smith at this point, they'd have more wins than if they had Russell Wilson. And if the Seahawks had Russell Wilson, they'd probably be 4-10.
It's amazing how that has worked out here. Well, I'd love to get into the upcoming, look at this week. What are you looking at in particular? You've already said, look, I think the Seahawks are going to fail to win at all. But look, the Chiefs faced the Texans last week and needed overtime to get over that. And the Texans were missing most of their roster, their star players, Brandon Cooks, Damian Pierce, etc. Yeah. And then before that, we were talking about Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson actually looked decent, had several good drives, and kept it close in the game before that. But you're still saying no hope. I'd love to hear a little bit more there. I mean, are you just predicting the Chiefs are going to run Pacheco and like run it into the ground that way?
It's kind of weird. It's almost like the Chiefs they let up against the Broncos because they had that such a big lead. Yeah. And then the Broncos were able to come back and do things they hadn't all season long, really. And going back to the Texans, it's the last 2 weeks they've just played, the Cowboys game was close. And then, it's just been kind of crazy with the Texans. I mean, there's a couple of things that worry me. The Seahawks running game, Ken Walker is a rookie. We could talk about the rookies for the Seahawks all day long, but he's been really good, but he's also banged up. So basically they are a pass-oriented team. And as much as Geno Smith has been far exceeding expectations and great this season, the way Shane Waldron's offense is designed is you have to be able to run about half the time that you pass it. So one-dimensional Seahawks offense doesn't work against anybody. And the defense, it'll be interesting to see what Woolen, how he reacts to Patrick Mahomes, because he hasn't faced a quarterback like that. And Mahomes is probably smart enough to realize, if I get Woolen on a cross pattern, that's going to be a long gain just because he's a rookie. But I just don't see any hope, because I feel like what the Chiefs can do offensively just goes against the Seahawks' weaknesses. There's no Seahawks strengths coming into this game that I think hurt the Chiefs. It'll be a closer game because every Seahawks game for the end of time, since Pete Carroll's been the coach, he could have been playing with high school kids. They'll come down to a one-score game, but it doesn't mean they're going to win every game.
That's great. So let's wrap up with this. What is your final prediction for Saturday's showdown?
My final prediction is unlike everybody else's on our staff, but I think it's going to be 35-23 Chiefs. And I think that late score for the 23 will probably be in the fourth quarter for the Seahawks. I don't think it's going to be a close game. Okay.
So you think even like the spread is not enough at this point?
Yeah, the Buccaneers after the bye week, that game wasn't as close. It was because Geno had two late scores. I mean, we've seen that even the Panthers game. It wasn't that close. We had a late score. The games they end up being closer than the score would tell you if you didn't watch the game. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be close, and I think the Chiefs. But I didn't think all season long, even when the Seahawks were 6-3, that they would actually be able to beat the Chiefs. It's just one of those matchups that Andy Reid is, offensive genius in what he does, really. And I think it's just a bad matchup for the Seahawks.
Well, Lee, we certainly appreciate you being here. We hope that, the Chiefs win by that much, although that's not the best for drama. But we've seen some lesser thought of opponents come a lot closer, giving their best effort in recent weeks. So we'll see how this plays out. Once again, folks, we're here with Lee Vowell. Lee, they can find you at Lee Vowell. That's 2 L's, right?
That is, yeah.
On Twitter. You can also read him at 12thmanrising.com. That's our Seahawks blog here on the Fansided Network. Lee, thanks so much for joining us today.
No, absolute honor. I mean, I maybe shouldn't say that Matt Conner is one of these. I have stolen ideas from Arrowhead Addict. Just everything. I have that pulled up, and I'm like, what are they doing? How can I transition that to a Seahawks? You're like a hero of mine, and I mean that sincerely with what you do. So it's been an honor. I appreciate being on.
Well, thanks, Lee. That's a short list, by the way, but my mom will be proud. I appreciate that. Hey, all the best to you, and yeah, we'll see how Saturday works out.
Yep. Good luck.